Good afternoon, all of you. Respected Session Chairman, Mahesh Shah sir, former President of Institute of Cost Accountants of India, as well as former President of Institute of Company Secretaries of India, Dr. Gurjar, sir, with heart and brain we are with you. And I have heard your session in the Golden Jubilee celebrations of Pune chapter also, and even today it was more fantastic than what I have heard few years back. Thank you so much. My co-speaker Arya sir, sir has raised really some important points on the power sector, and I think we should have similar kind of deliberations in future as well. My former colleague in the council, Vijay Joshi sir, our past chairman, Avijit sir, who has always been a friend to me, and of course Amit Chane, representative of Pune chapter, and galaxy of past presidents, president of Institute of Cost Accountants of India, and dear participants. Sometimes I heard, I heard Dr. Firodia yesterday. He said that he is a stepney and he knows what is his job. And even though I am talking about education sector, I know that I am a faculty who has been asked to come at the last moment, so I know what is my role. And with the delayed session also, I possibly need to play some 2020 role, which I am sure I have already told Amit that to tell me whenever it is possible. If I am really exceeding the time, just let me know. I will try to touch upon the subject, give justice to my subject. Let's hope so. Well, yesterday Dr. Abhay Firodia said that we are all of E plus E is equal to future prospects. So one of that E was enterprise ethics, and one of the E, the third E, was education. Of course, he was meaning from a human resource point of view that how a person takes the education and then how he has future prospects and how he improves his future. But then when we as a cost accountant, yes, of course, we have also taken the education, and I am a strong believer that whatever education you take, unless you implement the same, it will be of no use, whether you use it in the practice, you use it in the academia or elsewhere also. So that really helps you, and you should do that. Then only that education has some means. What is the meaning of education? That what you actually learn, you imply the same, and that is the education what I presume so. I have been working for Educational Institute for almost 6-7 years before moving to the practice. So I had a lot of experience into administration and activities of Educational Institute, not only in the small institutions, but also to the larger institutions, undergraduate, postgraduate management, IIMs, etc. So all my experience, I thought that I should put up into my session. When we say the service sector, and especially the education as a sector, there are certain costs which predominantly comes into our mind. And as what Gurjar sir was saying, that he could not get the good consultant, or possibly doesn't sign or doesn't look at the balance sheet. But then if you really have the good consultant, or if you really have the good cost accountant who is working for even Educational Institute, you will find that these are some of the main costs which he could be, or we could actually have identified in some of our assignments for the educational institutes. So as you know that main cost of educational institute stands with the manpower, and that is the faculty's cost. Of course, I'll be touching upon my various issues, problems which we have faced, but then presently to start with the same. So manpower cost, as what we know, service industry is more or less of the manpower cost only. So there the challenges very much lies within to find out where is the manpower cost, how to identify that manpower cost. That is the first thing, that is the allocation of the cost. All other activities in Educational Institute, I have seen there are entrance exams, there are normal exams, there are seminars, that all other activities and other operational cost also you will have to take into consideration. That includes your electricity and other cost also. Then we have infrastructure and facilities cost. So whenever I had been to all of the IIMs, wherever I had been to IIMs, I've always found that they have a separate building created for all their libraries. So, that library doesn't come just as it is. It has books. That is the cost of to the institution. It has its own infrastructure. That is a cost. Besides, you see actually the physical infrastructure, there is a cost, something called as a databases. That is very unique cost to these institutions, because they are the educational institutions, and there those costs are extremely important. So if you take any kind of a database, ProQuest or EBSCO, those are popular databases in educational industry in India. So these guys, these institutions, educational institute has to hire those things, and the cost is quite huge. You can't imagine that the cost may be, small, this, that, but their annual subscription are quite huge, especially if it is a science-related research or something like that, then the costs are even huge. So those costs we need to identify in educational institute, that is the service sector. And our next challenges lies, of course, how to make apportionment of those costs. Well, I've just inserted this slide. I thought so that, when we talk about past, present, future, and, something about cost accountant as a cost and management accountant, what we learn from the past, that also we should be able to take it forward. So one of the important aspect which is CMA, I'm not talking about any external authority to do so, but even the internal authority as a CMA, you need to find out what is the cost or the fees which can be charged by the institutions of their various courses. So as a cost accountant, you need to help them. You need to find out those costs. Then we have developed so many cost and management models for manufacturing industries or so many other industries, but there is a lot of scope to develop the same within service industry, especially to the educational institutions. We have designed quite a few number of MIs, costing MIs, etc. But then educational institute also requires that help from the cost accountants to develop their own MIs. We spoke a lot about agricultural yesterday, but then of course agriculture is a larger issue, larger perspective as such. But even educational institute do require those MIs. We also have a role to play by suggesting system for cost control and cost reduction. So I think there is where the cost accountants can play a very important role in the educational institute. When we say that we are learning from past, I'll share my practical experiences also. These are just, I'm creating background for what is there exactly in the educational institute as such. In manufacturing, we know there are labor hours. We try to capture labor hours. We have ERPs to capture the labor hours. The best possible ways of, to capture the not only laborer hours, but supervisor and so many other level of the hours as well. So it is very challenging even to find out what are all teaching hours in the educational institute, because I have worked as a faculty in many institutions, and most of the times rather than teaching, we do administrative roles also. So there it is always a challenging to find out how much are your teaching hours. Stock valuation is more or less same as what we learn from the manufacturing industry. There is quite a unique cost or a unique feature of educational industry, and that is the cost of research and development. It is unlike your manufacturing industry where we have a research which actually comes out as a development. But here in educational institute, your development is something which is not actually seen sometimes. For example, a faculty is having research into gold-related management or something of that sort. He comes out with the paper, and that paper is presented to some international conference. That is what your output of the research and development. But then what institute gets in return? But then still institutions, if you go to good institutions, I will not name them, but still IIM, IITs, etc. But then if you go to those good institutions, they have those costs. They incur those costs. So the problem with the cost accountant occurs that how to apportion the same. I'll come to those points also. Uniquely, we have seen that these IIMs or IITs also, or even all other institutions also sometimes, they have subsidized students or the free students in the class. There are some of them, they get reimbursement of their fees from the government. Some of them are actually subsidized students. Some of them are some additional kind of students. So those problems also we need to face when we are doing costing in the educational institute. these are some of the unit of measurements I thought that I should put forward as a thought-provoking, that what we can do as a per student cost is absolutely all right. That is what we normally or usually work out to be, that how much is per student cost. There are many issues related to per student cost also. I'll discuss with that in next 2-3 slides. Besides that, there is something called as a per teacher cost also. So when an educational institute employs the teachers, it is expected that either they will perform teaching job or the administrative job as such. So that per teacher cost can also be one of the unit of measurement. Then the per course cost, that is subject, this is what usually we call it as a subject. So there are subjects which has been offered to students. So either it is a part subject or a full subject with the 1.5 credit, with the 0.75 credit, 3 credit, etc. So it is always challenging for a cost accountant to find out how much is the per course or the subject cost for into those institutions. Per stream cost like science or arts. So in IIT also, if you go, there are many kind of engineering courses which they provide. So before even going to the per student cost, first I will have to find out how much is a per stream cost. And then that needs to be identified. We have facility cost also, various campuses. I know many institutions who has various campuses, not only in India, but also in abroad. We have institutions in Bombay who has campuses all across the world. So finding their cost, incorporating the same into your balance sheet, profit and loss account, and getting it done income and expenditure account, etc. So those per facility cost also needs to be done. Next is e-learning cost. So I have seen, I have been still associated with some of the e-learning institutions, and you know, there are different type of e-learning which they do. I'll give you, for example, they actually record the sessions. Today my session is being recorded. It is only for the purposes of the national convention at the institute. But I have actually recorded the sessions for the educational institute, which they have used for various courses, as well as, not only for the courses, but as well as various batches. So if I have recorded a session 5 years back, and if I meet a current student, possibly he is learning or he's been given on his tab that this is the session which has been recorded for this topic, so you go and learn from this session. So in that point in time, how will you apportion the cost? Because while recording the session, I know they have to hire the studio, then they have to pay to the faculty, there are many people in the studio. So all these costs which are there, that needs to be identified. That is one of the recorded lecture, but there is an online education also, like we have webinars. Now we are different institution, but then those who are profit-minded institutions, those who do online education, I know many institutions, private institutions nowadays, they actually sell the pen drive. So in that pen drive, they have recorded lectures. You must have seen Amitabh Bachchan doing advertisement for one of the very famous listed company into the education as such. So they actually drive them. What they are selling in that case, they are selling a pen drive, which says that now it is, edutech is now very popular everywhere. But then when it started 4 or 5 years back, so that pen drive actually contains the subjects or the lectures of various professors which are there. Now it is available online through app, that is all right. But still the company sells that pen drive. So how to deal with those costs and what should be the unit of measurement for those costs? So that we all need to be learning the same. Well, my presentation is basically to this and next slide only, that what all are practical problems we actually face while doing the costing of the educational institute. So as what I told you, course-wise, location-wise costing. A same course is been handled in one premises. Similar course has been handled into other premises. So and there are many basic facilities or the various kind of common facilities which has been used, like e-learning, etc., from one premises to other premises also. That is, I'm talking about one city to other city, but within the campus also, they many times both the courses use similar facilities. So that also becomes challenging for doing costing in the educational institutions as such. So fortunately, I put up this taxes charges in some cases and not in some cases. We say that costing is a tax free, so we actually don't consider tax anywhere in the costing especially. But then, as you know, IIMs which are covered, their 2 years programs are exempted for this one from GST and other courses are covered. Fortunately, with the Happy New Year now, IAMS also entry number 67 has been deleted by the GST Council. But prior to that, so when I start from 1st April to 31st of December, there few courses are chargeable to GST, there few courses are not. So what is to be done, how the credit is to be taken, whether full credit will come or not, all those practical problems you will face at least up to 31st of December. I don't know about the future, mostly future it will not come. There are quite a few additional services which has been given. So for example, all these IIMs actually conduct the examination of CAT CAT. So when this CAT examination, which is the entrance examination which has been conducted, there is a separate revenue center actually you need to find out and what are all costs associated with that. Because the cost which is associated for this examination, which is actually a revenue center, you will not be able to identify or apportion that cost with the other courses as well. We have seen this kind of a scenario also where some of the charity sessions which has been taken by the educational institutions and they come up with saying that these are our students, so you reduce our cost per student. So you really need to find out by some ways or means to see that whether, these charity sessions and how to apportion the cost to these charity sessions, etc. There is a unique cost into all those top institutions. You take private institutions or the public funded institutions as such, IIT, IIMs, etc. So cost of teaching and non-teaching staff. So especially for the non-teaching staff, they have a categorically system of giving the research associates in the educational institutes. So those research associates possibly may take the lecture maybe once in 5 years. And all these years, they are either associated with the institutions, but then they provide a lot of support to the faculties to do the research. So what to do with those costs? How those costs needs to be apportioned, that all we need to identify the correct methodologies to apportion those costs, and that should help. And that is the way we should do the service costing, that is in educational institute. Facility costing and the basis of facility costing. I'll give you one example. That one of the institutions we actually went to do a costing and they have a big Garba ground. Now the question arises that what to do with the cost of that big Garba. They call it as a big Garba ground, but they have some more other activities also being performed into that ground. So what to do with that cost? Whether it should be apportioned to all full-time students or whether it should be apportioned to part-time students or which students it should be apportioned to. So that question came to our mind and then we need to find a solution for that. Practically we faced another problem, that is the new building versus old building depreciation. We know institutions are large, they have been built up, government funded, everything. Now after 30-40 years of existence, they also thought that they should have a new building, so they constructed a new building. Now in the income and expenditure account P&L, what you find is, old building has a very less amount of depreciation, whereas the new building has a very huge amount of depreciation. So when they actually find that certain courses, subjects or the programs as such being conducted into old building, and certain programs are conducted into new buildings. So the problem came to us that how we will find out because the same course, morning batch has been conducted in the old building and the evening batch is conducted in the new building. So that means with the same course, same subject, possibly one cost is quite high, one cost is quite low. So how to do those things? That practically we need to address those issues. Also problem comes with the MDP and FDP income and losses. So many IIMs, IITs, even normal institutions, private institutions also, they have management development program and faculty development programs. And their profit or loss is being calculated. You have to actually calculate as a cost and management accountant there, considering that as one of the product, as what we do in the manufacturing also, that you have to find out the separate costs for them, and then their incomes and losses has to be identified. Just for example, I'll tell you, some of the IIMs, rather all of the IIMs, they conduct MDP programs. You must be receiving a lot of emails from IIMs if you are anywhere associated with them. So they conduct the management development programs specifically, and that is purely profit-oriented program, because they know people, those who will come for the program, executives, they will be paid by the company. So that is profit-oriented program. Whereas faculty development programs, which IITs and IIMs conduct, that is especially at the very low cost, or rather that ends into the losses as well. So we need to identify costs which are associated with his MDP and FDP and find out how much is profit or loss for these programs, so that these costs are not affecting your main programs. Because possibly the main programs may be again government funded or something of that sort. So as a cost accountant, our role in the costing the educational industry is to do so. We have seen those challenges also, that there are some students on campus, there are some students who are off campus. So when you are selecting a unit of measurement, what will you take? Whether you will take all students on the campus or whether you will take off students of the campus, and if you have to mix up, how will you get them together as such? So those practical issues also we have faced. Then some of the activities which are academic and non-academic. For example, placement services provided by the educational institute. Question arises that whether it is academic activity or non-academic activity. So if you ask anybody in the educational institute, they will tell you that placement, seminar, everything is our educational activities or academic activities. You cannot separate these activities from as a academic activities or a non-academic activities. So those challenges also you will face. If you see the costing principle as such, I will always say that today you are organizing one seminar, so that is a separate kind of activity or separate kind of a product as such in terms of manufacturing, if you think so. So find out how much is profit or loss for the same. But they say that if we don't conduct this, we can't conduct that. So there will be always a conflict of costing and educational sector as such. Then cost centers, revenue centers, then within cost centers, some sub centers, you will have to find it out. That is always a challenging job in the educational sector. Then we have issues of duration of courses. Some courses are 1.5 years, some courses are 1 year, some courses are 2 years. So how will you make those equivalent units? That also you need to identify. These are the practical issues what we face. Then we have general admin cost to be break up. So we have a lot of things in the admin cost. So how will you take up those admin costs and how will you break up, find it out. Income from consultancy, that is one of the big subject, because I know many professors who are actually involved into consultancy. They are allowed to do consultancy. Not only IIT IIMs, but also private institution, good larger institution. They allow their faculties to do consultancy. So in that case, their income from consultancy, how to consider those, because their cost possibly needs to be associated with the full-time courses or some part-time courses, but they have getting income for the institution as well as for themselves also. So how to find out those income from consultancies? Of course, basis of allocation, apportionment we discussed in large also. There are some of the techniques which I'll not cover up much, but then there are some of the techniques which you need to possibly implement in the cost and management as well, whether it is activity-based costing, total cost, TQM, BPR, Six Sigma or balance scorecard. It is very much possible to implement those techniques in the institutions, educational institutions. Then there are some of the suggestions from my side that whenever you are making the MIS, so these are the ratios which you can actually, there are some of the ratios are financial ratios, some of the ratios are non-financial ratios. So those also you need to identify and put up in your MIS as a cost accountant. Those services you can definitely do it. These are some of the suggestions from my side, that these are the allocation and apportionment basis. Of course, they are suggestive. So number of students, that is very much there. So if you can identify as a separate cost center or a revenue center as a hostel, then you need to identify how many of them are hostel students, how many of them are non-hostel students. Then within the hostel also, if the electricity, water, etc. needs to be apportioned, then what is the basis at which you can find it out? If it is directly identifiable, yes, okay. If it is not, then depreciation, etc. maybe floor area you can use, find out the direct cost. Some of the student faculty ratio can be used for the advertisement, seminar, etc. I think that ends the presentation, but my other slide, I think there is some issue with, you have taken the wrong file from me. There is another file into that. I hope you will put up that file also, because there is something which a challenge we have taken. So if you can find out my another file which is there in the folder, I guess, and you can just put up over there. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can definitely ask. And thank you so much for your patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.